Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Nick Best. I'm Managing Director here at Astranti Financial Training. I'm also our lead strategic case study tutor. I've had 10 years experience now of teaching the final level case study. And what I want to do today with you is share with you the first page of the examiner's report from the last exam. Now, this is absolutely crucial. From a tutor's point of view, we talked to CIMA. I've been in touch with CIMA for the last year about this exam in relation to writing our material, in relation to the exams, the way that they're marked, so I can tell all our markers and all the marking so they can give the best feedback. But you know what, there's nothing quite like hearing from the examiner after the exam exactly what people do well and what they didn't do so well. What you get to see is the difference between what we were kind of led to believe before the exam and the way things actually are. And I can tell you from the point of view of a tutorial provider, there's a number of things that we were told about the way the exam would be marked and reviewed and the nature of the exam were actually different in the real thing. And whoever your provider is, I suspect that you've been advised certain things that weren't necessarily what was actually in the real exam. And this is where we can start to really find out what they're doing, the way they're examining this, and the way that they're marking it, and what key people's problems are. And that's what I want to share with you today, is what the real lessons learnt from this examiner's report are. What I'm going to do actually quite simply is I'm going to go through with you this first page of the examiner's report, a little bit on the second page. The remainder of it I go through in my masterclass 3. So you can come on my masterclass 3 if you want me to see me go through the rest of that report. Many of the key things are on this this first page though, so this is you're going to get most of the benefit from this particular video that we're doing here today. Right then, so let's get straight into some of the comments. Firstly then, the main problems were candidates failing to answer what was asked. Now, the key from your point of view is to spend time. And one thing I see students doing is they rush into starting to answer. This is a really time-pressured exam. There's no doubt about that. But if you rush that planning phase, then you will end up writing about the wrong thing. And if you're not answering the specific question asked, you will simply score no marks. Very, very few marks at least. And so take time up front to plan. Now, on our Masterclass 1, which actually you can still buy the recordings on Masterclass 1 if you want to do that, I actually go through a plan of a case study live with the class, but we've also got that on our study text part 1 and also in the course videos as well. For anyone that's on the course, go back and watch the section on planning. It's absolutely vital that you plan. I recommend up to 25% of your time planning. Okay, if you can get that down to 20%, that's great. But you do not want to skip on the planning. And a key part is identifying the specific requirement. Actually, again, I do a video on how to identify what the requirement is and make sure you are answering the question asked and not something different. The biggest problem in not answering the question asked is that you lose just huge numbers of marks because simply you're just writing lots of stuff, but you simply can't get a mark for it because it isn't in the marking scheme. And that leads on to the second point here, which is people writing what they know on a particular topic. It might be that there was a question on governance. And so let's just tell you everything I know about governance. That is not what they are looking for. What they are looking for are really practical solutions. Imagine that you're going into that company and you are going to sit down with the board and tell them how they should be running that company. Would they want to listen to you say, well, the UK's code of corporate governance is as follows? No. What they want to know is where they are applying it, where they aren't applying it, and whether they have to apply it. It's the practical elements. The where do I go with my business? Give me some advice. That's what you need to be doing. And in actual fact, the examiners goes on to say that people were very regularly using irrelevant models. People were using random models for which there simply are no marks. And some candidates just had a list of models. And as you read on through the case, what the examiner means by this is just simply, well, we could use this model or that model or this model. Well, that's getting you nothing. Just to quickly reference a model, no. Now, in actual fact, one lesson coming out from this is, yes, models are important, but it must be, if we look further down, marks are only available for discussing appropriate models and, crucially, linking that to what's been asked. So, what you must do is think, what is the model which is appropriate? What I'm going to be doing on my Masterclass 3 is actually looking at what are the right models in what circumstances and really focusing on, for this case, what the key models are and how you can go about pulling out those key models. It was interesting on this March 2015 exam session, I come up with my list of my top 10 models, and what was interesting was that my top 2 were there, and of the other 8, 3 of the other models were examined as well. So therefore, it is reasonably easy to predict which are the most likely models, because the pre-scene kind of tells you that. The pre-scene guides you as to what the most important issues are. Okay, and actually you must be prepared for the top issues as well. That's another thing. It's not on this schedule here, but you must be prepared to deal with what the most likely issues are, because it's really obvious from the pre-scene actually where the examiner is going. Again, on my Masterclass 3, my final Masterclass, I do go through my top issues. You can also buy those. They're part of the pre-scene video series as well, so when I go through my top issues. But they really are. It is clear. And actually, what was interesting was that the examiner said there was little evidence of knowledge of the pre-scene material, which, it put shudders through my spine, that particular one. I spent 3 days analysing the pre-scene and recording videos for people on the pre-scene, really in depth, and then people come back and they've not been using it. Well, I suppose it's not necessarily my students. I hope it's not my students that aren't using it, because I'm hoping that having really gone into the pre-scene in depth with 5 hours worth of video analysis, that people really are using that. Again, on Masterclass 3, I do a little exercise to make sure people know how to actually use the information in the pre-scene. It's one thing having read the pre-scene and analysed it. It's another thing to use it in the exam. You must use it. A tip for you here is that every issue, think, and this is what I do, as part of my planning approach, I say to people that what you must do is you must always think for every issue, how does this apply to the pre-scene? You would never start writing a question without firstly thinking, how does this apply to the pre-scene? It comes down to, have you really done detailed strategic analysis so you can answer the question with that pre-scene knowledge? And the examiner's coming back saying, well, no, people hadn't analysed the pre-scene. Which was surprising. It is surprising. And do you know what my experience is that everyone does analyse the pre-scene. It's not that they don't know it, it's just they don't use it. Very often it can be like 6 weeks earlier that people read through the pre-scene, and they've done lots of mock exams since then, which of course is extremely important. But what you mustn't do is lose sight of your knowledge of the business's strategy and its position, and comment on whether this is appropriate given that strategy, given that position, given where the business is. Okay. So, it was as if candidates did not realise the pre-scene was important. I have to say I'm really surprised at that. The reason I say that is many years of teaching the T4 case study, and we didn't see too much of a comment on people not knowing the pre-scene well enough. So I'm fascinated to see the strategic case study that's come back with that comment. It suggests to me that in comparison with T4 is that they really want you to bring out what was in the pre-scene. They really want you to pull those key points out and use them effectively. And again, I'd guide you in the focus of my pre-scene analysis videos. And also my strategic analysis and our industry analysis as well. And in fact, just focusing on the industry analysis, we've got a 100-page industry analysis on the current pre-scene. And what is really interesting, and to me this was a surprise actually, we've produced those industry analyses for the case study, and of course we did so with all the T4 ones as well. But at T4 they specifically said you must give industry examples. Now we hadn't been told that at the strategic case study. It seemed as if it was less important, but what's coming out here is that students are not using industry knowledge. And actually there's a comment later on, and it said that where people had used industry examples, that was fantastic. The best scripts use industry examples. And so what's crucial is you must learn some industry examples and use those in the case. On Masterclass 3, I'm going to give you my top 5 industry examples to use. In our industry pack, we've got loads and loads of industry examples, a whole section of, I forget how many, it's 40 to 50, something like that, industry examples, specific ones that you can use in that industry pack, as well as 50 pages of generic industry analysis, giving you the background on the industry. And so I really would urge you to really get to grips with the industry much better than, particularly if you're a resitter, much better than you did in the last session, because it's using that knowledge and that background and giving industry examples, which is obviously really key here. Again, down here, the examiner is saying, what must you do? You must understand the industry much better. So that's very important. Okay, now here's the next thing. Candidates must manage their time well. Now, what comes out from reviewing the rest of the sections is that simply the last part of virtually every section was poorly done. And you know why that's poorly done? Not because it was hard. Simply, people are running out of time. And, you know, that really makes my blood boil. And one of the reasons it does is that one of my big bugbears is people not managing their time. Look, it is a really time-pressured exam. There's no getting away from that. But you must manage your time section by section. And one thing I get people to do when they're planning is to plan their time, so that, let's say you've got an hour, you will break that down for how much you've got in your 2 or your 3 subsections. And you must stick to that. You mustn't go over. You're much, much better off doing reasonably well, section by section by section, than doing a brilliant first part and an awful last part. And I will explain to you why in just a second, okay? There is an extremely good reason why you must manage your time and do well section by section by section, and not just do very poorly in the last part. Okay, I'll come on to that just a second. Okay, finally, you do need to have a good level of knowledge of the 3 syllabi. I have to say that my experience is, and the experience of a lot of students' feedback after the exam, was they'd spent too long revising the theory. And so most people actually overly focus on the theory. And you can see that that is one minor element of passing this exam. Okay, and so, you know, don't spend most of your time doing that. Okay, you do need to know it, but you should know it from your previous studies. You don't have to know it in the same depth as you did for that. Obviously, there's no calculations in this exam. You need to know high-level overview only. Okay, we do our study text part 2 is a summary. We've taken the 800 pages of our 3 individual study texts and condensed them down to 300 pages for the most important things you need to know. So, you know, that could be a very quick way of you just quickly reviewing those if you haven't yet done that. But to be honest with you, don't overdo the theory, okay? So, now I'm going to come back to this point about you must manage your time well, so you don't run out of time on sections, okay? Now, the reason is that when we look at the variance, each section is allocated to a particular criteria. The first section allocated to business skills. And then let's just take another one. Advising on the creation of a team, allocated to leadership skills. Okay. Now let's say you've not managed your time effectively. And let's say that therefore you didn't do well on advising on here, on people skills there, and let's just imagine for a second that the last one of section 3 also happened to be a people skills one. And so the 2 people skills ones happen to be section 2 last section, section 3 last subsection. Okay? What's going to happen? You've done very badly on the 2 people skills sections. And you must get 30% on people skills or you will fail it. You could pass the whole script by doing well on the early sections, and then fail the people skills section because you have to have that 30% Okay, about a third is what the CIMA have told us is that you need. And so if you absolutely must balance your time. You see all these requirements here. You must balance your time against all of those and not make these last ones short, because you'll find yourself cutting down your time on... That's not going very well, is it? There we go. You're cutting down your time on what could be... Basically, you could be about to fail if you've not balanced your time. You need a reasonable answer on every section. You must never miss a section out, because that could simply mean all the skills in that area, all your leadership skills, bang, gone, because you've missed that section out. And suddenly you failed leadership skills, you failed the whole exam. This exam is about balance across all the competencies, because you've got to get that minimum 30%. Okay? Now, again, this was something that was new that CIMA didn't reveal to us really until we've seen these criteria. In fact, if you look at the pilot papers, they've structured it differently, and they obviously changed their mind as we got close to the exam about the way that they were going to approach the marking and the way that you were marking under these competencies. And very few people realised that this was going to be like this. In fact, I don't think anyone did, if we're really honest. Okay, so if you're one of those people out there that failed on one of your competencies, you might know why. You probably did very badly on the couple of criteria that focused on that particular type of skill. Good, right, so there is my analysis. As I say, I'm going to go through actually some of the more detailed, focused analysis. There's a lot in here. Look at all this detail. There's loads and loads of fantastic points. And what I'm going to do on my Masterclass 3 is I'm going to go through pulling out, not the things to do with specific theories, because that's not useful, because it'll be different theories in your exam, and it's a different scenario. So, talking about the founders as they do in this is not very useful to you, because you've got a different scenario. But what is useful is hidden in there are some really useful hints for what you should do and shouldn't do in the exam. So we're going to make that a big part of our Masterclass 3 when I go through talking that through for you. So there we go. Do remember that getting good at time management as well is also about practicing exams. Getting good at mastering your timing across different subsections. You need to practice exams and practice them to time. It amazes me, people on our course, how many are not practicing to time. And I bang on about it as part of the course. Keep to time, keep to time, keep to time. And yet we still see significant numbers of people who don't stick to their timings. It's practiced time. Practiced on the computer as if you were doing it in the real exam. And remember, our mock exams are done on a Pearson VUE-like system, so you can practice in that format, which hopefully you will find useful for managing your time. Do your plan, okay, and do learn the lessons from where people went wrong. I've highlighted them all there. And final point is, as you approach the exam, work hard, and let me wish you the best of luck.